This time on Psychic Investigators. When a local dentist is found brutally murdered in his home, everyone is shocked.
And I said, well, what's so bad that I can't go in? And they said, you really don't want to see this.
The police suspect his closest friends.
Now, all of a sudden, we're under a light for everybody to watch our every move.
Until a pair of psychic sisters share a disturbing vision.
I felt a lot of blood pooling around my feet. And I had a flash of a bat.
And all of a sudden, these spirit guides just screamed out, "Law enforcement."
Blairsville, Pennsylvania, an hour's drive from Pittsburgh. A factory town which once turned out the steel and glass that helped build America. This is small town USA, where life is comfortable and safe. At least that's what everyone thought, until a spring day in 2006. On the afternoon of April 13th, a teenage boy makes a shocking discovery at his next-door neighbor's house.
He was so upset, and I'm like, what is wrong? What is wrong? I thought maybe Zachary got hurt or what have you. He's like, you have to come now, it's John. He's dead.
Melissa Yuse's neighbor is Dr. John Yelenic, a local dentist. She immediately calls 911.
When I walked up to the door, I saw there was blood on the outside of the door and the window. And right inside the foyer, there was blood all over the floor, all over the walls, all over the floor.
In the living room, Yelenic discovers a man's body, lying in a pool of blood, his throat slashed from ear to ear.
Immediately, I knew that it had to be a homicide. No one could have done that to themselves.
Corporal Janelle Yelenic has been with the Blairsville police for 6 years, but this is her first homicide.
It just looked like there was a violent struggle and there's just blood that went everywhere.
She immediately calls in the Pittsburgh FBI to help collect forensic evidence. Throughout the house, the killer has left a trail of blood.
There were footprints going out through the living room, through the dining room, out the back door.
The footprints may belong to the killer, but he's left no weapon and wiped his fingerprints clean.
The word had already started to get out, and people were coming to find out what was going on.
One of those people is the victim's cousin, Marianne Clark.
And as I got to his house, I asked, I wanted to go in. And they said, you can't go in. And I said, well, what's so bad that I can't go in? And they said, well, he's been murdered, and you really don't want to see this.
Melissa Yuse, John's next-door neighbor, has been his friend since the 9th grade.
He was an awesome guy. He was an awesome father who loved his son very much. He was a good neighbor, and he also made a difference in our community.
John was probably the kindest, most gentle, generous, fun-loving person you would ever meet. If you met John, you loved John.
John Yelenic had recently moved back to the neighborhood after splitting with his wife of 9 years.
The divorce was a really bitter divorce. Every time they would get close to a settlement, Michelle always wanted something more,
including custody of their 9-year-old son. But after 5 long years, Michelle and John finally agreed to a settlement.
John finally saw an end to this dark tunnel that he was going through.
But John never got a chance to sign the papers.
I don't think anyone in Blairsville had any idea that this could be anything other than random. There was no reason for John Yelenic to be murdered.
Jennifer Mealy follows the sensational story for the local television news.
That's when you saw the neighbors start to lock their doors at night, something they'd never done before, keeping their porch lights on and watching things a little more closely.
Living right beside John's house, my kids were terrified. We didn't sleep for, I bet, over a week. We were just so scared to be in our home.
In the days following the chilling crime, the police canvass the area. A neighbor reports hearing two men fighting about money in the pre-dawn hours. This casts a new light on evidence found at the scene. Evidence pointing directly at the victim's next-door neighbors, the Uses, the family who first raised the alarm.
We were on the coffee table. We found a check that was made out from the Uses to Mr. Yelenic. They didn't want him to cash it yet. So Mr. Hughes was a suspect. He was, I guess, a person of interest is how we call it.
Police take the victim's neighbors in for questioning and grill them about the uncashed check.
I was going to open a bakery here in Blairsville, and John had given me $15,000 to help open my bakery.
But Melissa says he asked for the money back suddenly, saying he needed it to make a tax payment.
And I wrote him a check. I said, I only have $14,000 at this time, and then I'll get you the other $1,000 within the next couple weeks.
The police aren't convinced by the story.
Not only were we losing a dear friend of ours, but now we were actually being considered as somebody that could have done this horrible crime to him.
With her husband now a prime suspect, Melissa is desperate to prove his innocence. A month after the murder, she visits two psychic sisters in search of answers. Hosts of a regular psychic tea party, Suzanne and Vincent claim to be guided by the spirits of the dead.
My psychic insights come to me in a variety of different ways. I start seeing flashes of light. I start seeing scenery and images.
I might hear or taste something that would all be symbolic to what is this person all about, or what is the situation all about.
And I also have a spirit guide who accompanies me during a psychic session. I see a picture of him that kind of emerges, kind of like a negative, and he gives me these images and these visions of the people that I'm trying to communicate with on the other side.
Melissa tells the psychic pair nothing about the murder.
And the first thing my spirit guide said to me was there was a grief cloud all around this lady. I just said, oh my goodness, your boys found a body? And she had said, yes, they did. The energy around her was saying that someone might even suspect her husband of doing this gruesome crime, of killing this neighbor.
I was just simply amazed on what they could see that was going on with our family.
The psychics have seen the murder of John Yelenic, but can they find his killer?
Melissa just kind of casually said, well, who do you think killed my neighbor? And all of a sudden, immediately, the spirit guides just screamed out, law enforcement.